Okay, with the New Zealand Sprintcar Title returning to Ruapuna Speedway this year, we thought we might reach out to some previous winners of the championship. And in 2019, we were witness to a 17-year-old from California coming over to New Zealand and showing us all how to drive a sprint car. Of course, that was Buddy Kofoid. And welcome to the show, Buddy. Good to see you over the other side of the world.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, I haven't talked about, I think the last time I was in New Zealand for a while, so it'd be nice to catch up a little bit and relive some of that.
Well, look, you're an absolute sensation when you come over here, and we might talk about your career after this, but certainly, what were your memories of the Cromwell Championship? You seemed to dominate the racing, if I remember rightly, and you really put on a performance for everybody that was watching you.
Yeah, so it's fun to remember, I mean, a whole lot about that race. I just remember, I think everyone was able to get a good jump and was kind of just able to control the race by being the leader. And and I felt like my car got better as actually the race went on. And I remember an interview, or not an interview, like a video where they're saying that I did 3 laps under the track record in the middle of the feature. So
That's right.
I knew, I knew my car was good, but I didn't realize that we were that good. But yeah, and then to be, I think, the third American to win it was really cool. And it's a big deal to Daniel Anderson and Doug Roots and Jim Richmond and Brad Moy and everyone that had their hand in the car, making it fast and making the opportunity possible for me and Doug to come down from America to compete was a lot of fun. And hopefully able to come back down and do that soon, or at least visit and see some of the people that I feel like I've gotten really close with.
Yeah, it was a pretty incredible performance. Of course, we never knew Buddy Kofoid back in the day. We'd heard this rumour about some young kid at 13 driving sprint cars in America. And if I go back in time a little further, I think you owned a sprint car when you were just 10 years old. Is that the story?
Yeah, so my my dad and I decided so we built a spec sprint when I was 9, which is like a limited sprint car, and I practiced as 9 years old. And then we actually got rid of that and we built a wing 360 sprint car, and I practiced that when I was 10. And then when I was 11, I ended up driving for Dan Simpson. And then when I was 12, I had to go back to go-karts because I was too young to find anywhere to race sprint cars. But then, yeah, since 13 on, I've been running sprint cars pretty much full time. Um, yeah, so my dad and I, we did have our own car when I was about 10. And then we did race it when I was 13 a little bit. But now, actually, what's funny is one of the guys that used to help helped me out a lot when I drove for Dan Simpson. He actually has a big car collection, and he bought that car, and he still owns that car, and it's sitting in his car collection right now. Our first sprint car.
Well, how good's that? It's probably a little more valuable these days, given that you've got a big racing history behind you. You probably haven't known anything apart from sprint car racing, I would imagine, but we recently seen you transition into a midget. So you won the New Zealand title here in 2019. Tell me how it all played out for you when you went back to America.
I moved out to the Midwest in 2019. I was living in Ohio at the time, and I raced full time for Ed Neumeister with the Linders, and I ran, 410s full time around the Midwest. And because that was something that I always wanted to do, was to get out of California and move to the Midwest, which is where, at least, if you want to make it as a race car driver, one of the first steps is to kind of get out of California and get to the Midwest somewhere. And so I was able to do that, and then that's kind of where Keith Coons and Pete Willoughby, who own Keith Coons Motorsports, the midget team I run for right now, they were able to kind of keep a closer eye on me since I was a lot closer to Indiana than, being in Ohio than I was in California. And they decided to try me out a couple times that year, and I won my first midget race for them. And then I had some good runs throughout the year, and then they hired me full-time beginning of January in 2020. And now that I've been heavily involved with Toyota, and I'm a development driver for them, and So a lot of that's, with the help of Toyota and Mobile One, with my midget stuff, and then some of the truck and ARCA stuff I've done, and late model stuff now. So, but yeah, that being in the Midwest exposed me to that, and then that got me the opportunity that I have right now, and the stuff that the other stuff I have outside of my midget racing.
Well, it's pretty impressive stuff, buddy. Of course, you took out the USAC Midget Car Championship in, I think it might have been your second year. It was pretty impressive stuff. We'll get to the BC 39 shortly, but how did you find the transition from sprint cars to midgets? Did it feel natural to you? Did you have to adjust things differently? How did it play out for you?
Um, I mean, it was kind of tough. Um, I mean, USAC is really tough. Not saying that any other series in midgets isn't, but I started when I started running for KKM. We started in the smaller stuff, the more lower key series to get my feet wet and help the transition be a little bit more natural. Um, but running for a team like them, I feel like accelerated my learning curve,
Mm.
which I think has played a big part in our success now. I felt like we did it the right way, and I think running sprint cars for as long as I have, which I guess hasn't been that long compared to some other people, but I felt like wing sprint cars, and midgets, to me, actually related the most out of anything else that I've done so far. So I felt like going from one to the other, or vice versa, has actually helped quite a bit. And especially in anything under a wing sprint car, it feels more slowed down, and I feel like it's not easy, but you can pick it up a little bit quicker. At least I felt like that's kind of what helped me the most.
Well, it's impressive stuff again. We did watch that BC 39 and you were banging walls with Cannon McIntosh, I think it was. And honestly, there was times there we all thought you were going to tip it up. Tell us about that experience and how hard was that one to win?
There's probably a couple times where I thought I was going to too, but no, it was a really good race. I thought, as a fan standpoint, I thought we put on a really good show for them nonetheless, and I felt like that was one of the most enjoyable and probably one of the best midget races that I've been a part of. But to win it, in Brian's honor, and the race, that brings 80 to 100 cars, and we're in Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is one of the most historic, racing venues in the world. So to do all that there is really meaningful, and but yeah, the race itself was really good, I thought, and um, and just the way the cushion built up on the wall, I felt like not a lot of people wanted to do what I was doing, so I felt like that helped me kind of stand out with how I was running up the wall and running back down the wall, and making speed. It probably looked wicked, and it was, but ironically at the same time, I thought it was, for me, it was actually really comfortable. And at the end of the day, that's what it took to win. So if it wasn't comfortable, I had to make it feel comfortable and figure it out, and luckily we were able to.
Well, for the close observers of midget car racing, you did look like you were in a flow and you did look like you knew where you were going. But man, it was spectacular to watch. And for anybody tuning in, what a treat that was for you two guys going at it as quick as you did. Of course, you then went on to Knoxville and actually competed in the Nationals. Tell us about that experience. I think you ended up 12th, was that right?
We were 11th on Saturday, so it's, I guess, first off, then that was my first nationals, and I think at that point I had only ran Knoxville two or three times, probably a month or two prior, before I actually ran the nationals, and that's, to me, and if you ask anyone else in dirt racing, that's about as tough as it gets as far as just making the race. But I was supposed to run last year for CJB, and I broke my wrist, so I wasn't able to go to Knoxville. And it's funny. I felt like the last couple years leading up to this year, it never worked out where I could go. And then it finally, with Crouch Motorsports, we were able to spend some time there before, and then it worked out where, I didn't get hurt or something didn't happen where I couldn't go. So, but yeah, it was a really good experience, and just making the show alone was huge. But ran well, and out of 110 of the best sprint car drivers in the world, and 110 guys I think showed up, and I thought we got better and better, and to be rookie of the race is also a good little feather in your cap.
Yeah, it was good to watch, and of course Donny Schatz took it out, and it was pretty emotional when he won it because I think he's won it a number of times clearly, but it is pretty tough to win at Knoxville, and one day, who knows, Buddy Kofoid might take out a nationals there. It begs the question, what's your preference now? You've done a few seasons in midget car racing and sprint cars. What would your preference be if it was just purely based on driving?
So it's funny, like I felt like I got asked this a lot last year, or maybe my first year in the midgets, and I was like, yeah, I don't really know, I don't know. I enjoy the midgets and I enjoy the sprint cars, but they're fun, and they put on great racing in their own way. So it's hard to compare them. But now that I feel like sprint cars has always been kind of home to me. And now that I can finally, spend more time in a sprint car again this year, and I felt like, we've had, probably one of my better years in a sprint car this year. I think I'd probably have to choose sprint cars right now. It's just, things are going good, and in Crouch Motorsports and it's a really good team, and we're all getting along, and we're fast most places we go, and we're consistent. And, I just feel comfortable, and so right now I probably have to go with the sprint car.
Well, that's interesting to know, and um, I certainly thought you were a natural sprint car driver, and but the transition to midgets was wonderful to watch. There seems to be a pattern around the world for all ex-midget car drivers to go sprint car racing now. We've got our own guys, Michael Pickens, Zeb Wise, Tyler Courtney, he's doing it as well, and it seems to be a discipline that most people take on now.
Yeah, I think, I guess compared to some of those guys, I started in sprint cars before I ever started in midgets. And so I felt like I kind of had a few years under my belt before I moved to a midget, and at the same time, I still continued my sprint car racing as much as my schedule allowed me to. But, I feel like, sprint car drivers, when they go to a midget, I feel like they excel. But then, like I said, you see those guys going from midgets to sprint cars or vice versa, and they run well, and if you can kind of go back and forth and have success. So I think that kind of shows some of the similarities between the cars, and like I said, if you do good and then you jump in another, I feel like it can make you really good in that one, and then it just keeps you versatile, or I guess you're able to adapt quickly, and I feel like in racing that's really important. Um, Also, wing sprint cars pay good money in the U.S. too.
Oh, well, that's important. It's hard to believe you're just 20 years old, Buddy, and it's certainly been impressive. I remember some of our commentators saying to our crowd, watch out for this guy. He's an absolute sensation, and you've actually realised all that potential, man. It must be a hell of a ride for you. What are the future plans for Buddy Kofoid? You must be being courted by many other car disciplines. Anything on the...
As of right now, with Toyota, they're still finalizing, I think some plans as far as what I'm going to do next year. But my main focus right now with them is to finish the midget season strong and hopefully get into a championship. And they also have been getting me some pavement late model races. So hopefully those can continue to go good. And that's, at least for me, I would like to be moved on to pavement next year, and focus on that. And because my goal has always been NASCAR, so that's just a small step to getting there. That in Toyota's got numerous possibilities and opportunities and connections to get there. So as a dirt guy, I think they have a really great midget program, and then they kind of try and get you to excel in that, and if you can, then they'll move you on to pavement. So hopefully, like I said, I'm not sure quite yet, but hopefully pavement aspirations come true soon.
Well, I can't imagine it would be too hard for you to make the discipline change. Buddy Kofoid, thanks for joining the show today on Methanol Madness. We really appreciate having you on here. We'd love to see you out at New Zealand tracks one time in the future. Difficult to know. Your career is certainly stellar in the making and going somewhere right now. But again, thanks for joining the show, and we wish you good luck.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully get to see you guys down there soon and at a racetrack or just wherever. So yeah, thank you.
There you go, folks. Buddy Kofoid joins the show. An absolute sensation in the sprint car and midget car world. Probably one of the best drivers we've ever seen down here in New Zealand, and it's going to be great to watch his career as he takes it further into his own future.